Henry's white moonlight was cheated on and got divorced. He broke up with me without any hesitation and posted on his moments. I really wish I could go back 8 years and change Olivia's fate of marrying that scumbag. Olivia. The very white moonlight he's been pining for. Later, he and I traveled back in time together to 8 years ago. He changed the fate of his white moonlight marrying the scumbag. I changed the fate of being with him. When I saw Henry's moments post, I had just finished an 8th-hour surgery on a patient. On the way back to the office, I fainted in the hallway from physical exhaustion. When I woke up again, I was in a dim private room. Colorful lights were flashing everywhere. Blasting music was looping and alternating. And someone patted my shoulder and asked, "Audrey, you're such a lightweight." Passing out after just one drink. My blurry vision gradually focused, and I saw the person in front of me clearly. It was Olivia. A whinered short skirt, slightly curly long hair. I stared at her bright and gorgeous face for a few seconds before stumbling and rushing into the washroom. Looking at the fair and delicate face in the mirror, I repeatedly splashed cold water on my temples and had to believe the scar was gone. I time-traveled back 8 years, to the year I had just started my freshman year of college. Today is my roommate Olivia's birthday. And, because I mistakenly drank a glass of extremely strong liquor, I got drunk and passed out on the sofa for a long time, with my head still groggy. I'd just come out of the restroom when I bumped into someone. Before I had a chance to apologize, a familiar, deep voice sounded by my ear. "Sorry. Are you okay?" My fingers holding the phone tightened subconsciously, and I looked up at the man in front of me. He was tall and stood straight, his eyes deep and sharp. And he was wearing only a plain black, loose-fitting t-shirt. It was Henry. Our eyes met and locked for a few seconds. I ignored his vague, unclear expression, lowered my eyes, calmly said it was nothing, and brushed past him, sitting back down on the sofa in the private room. I had just opened a bottle of mineral water and taken a sip when Henry pushed the door and came in. Olivia, smiling, hugged his arm and introduced to us. "This is my older brother, Henry. He studies at university and next door." The flickering lights were still swaying. With one hand in his pocket, he looked down at us and gave a slight nod. Not counting the accidental bump in the hallway just now, this was the real scene of our first meeting in our past life. Henry is Olivia's older stepbrother, the person I liked and was with for 6 years. I discovered that the person he liked wasn't me on the day Olivia got married. After he drank himself senseless, he held me and gently called out, "Xia xia, xia xia." At that moment, my mind went completely blank. It took me a long while to realize that xia xia was Olivia. The person he loves is Olivia. Too bad that was when I loved him the most. So I sat in the dark for a whole night, and the next day pretended like nothing happened. Continued to be with him. Continued to believe what he once told me. She's just my younger sister. Until later, after Olivia was cheated on and got divorced, I heard with my own ears as she, with tear-filled eyes, leaned in Henry's arms and sobbed. "Gah, the one I've loved was never him. It's you. The person I love is you." She said her mother has a heart condition and threatened to die to forbid them from being together. So that's why she pretended shed with someone else. And that's why she set him and me up together. I don't know if that's true or not, but Henry believed her. So that night, Henry came to find me, and after looking at each other in silence for a long time, he said with a hoarse voice, "Audrey, let's break up." I gazed at his handsome face, and, before I could even ask the why that, forcibly suppressing all my emotions with reason and composure, I came out after 8 hours in the operating room to see Henry's moments post. I really wish I could go back 8 years, to change Olivia's fate of marrying that scumbag. Now, getting a do-over, I can finally see the details I'd either never noticed before, or had seen but deliberately ignored. For example, the birthday cake Henry brought that he personally made for Olivia. For example, when Olivia was hugging a liquor bottle and wouldn't let go, Henry would gently coax it out of her hands. For example, after the party was over, a drunk Olivia wanted Henry to piggyback her home, and he would do so without any hesitation. The other 2 roommates looked on and remarked, "Her brother is way too good to her." Huh. Back then, I also naively thought he was just a brother. So when Olivia later found someone she liked and kept trying to set me up with Henry, I did indeed fall for him. So handsome, gentle, and thoughtful. It wasn't until the truth was revealed that I belatedly realized his gentleness and thoughtfulness were never for me. Whether it was birthdays or anniversaries, he was always unenthusiastic. Whenever Olivia was around, his attention would always be on her, from start to finish. The only person Henry loved was Olivia. Just like now, I was pulled into Henry's car, passed out in the back seat with my roommate, and while waiting at a red light, Henry turned his head to gaze affectionately at Olivia in the passenger seat, who was also passed out from being drunk. The evening breeze lifted a strand of long hair by my ear. I impassively remained silent in the dimness. In the blurry vision of my slightly open eyes, Henry raised his right hand toward Olivia and said very, very softly, "Xia xia. This time, I won't let you marry him again." My heartbeat was particularly violent at this moment. I closed my eyes and entered the darkness, realizing with absolute clarity that Henry had also traveled back. He wouldn't let Olivia marry someone else, and I wouldn't be with him again. After returning to the dorm and lying on the familiar yet strange bed, the fan overhead was whirring, blowing out gusts of hot air, and I rubbed my slightly aching head as I drifted off to sleep. In my dream, I seemed to be trapped in a loop, constantly reliving the 8 years with Henry, from when we first met to our breakup, hearing him say over and over again, "Audrey, let's break up." What rescued me from the nightmare was the vibration of my phone. I opened my eyes and zoned out for a few seconds, picked up my phone and glanced at the schedule, and suddenly remembered that at this time I had found a part-time tutoring job, tutoring a high school student in English. I glanced at the time, quickly got out of bed and washed up, casually grabbed a bag of bread, and then took a vehicle and rushed to the student's home. Luckily, I teach English, and since I needed to read the most cutting-edge academic results in the medical field after I started working, I didn't drop my English. I flipped through the teaching materials and got a general impression. I teach a high school girl, and after finishing the lesson I had prepared for her, I started helping her check the essay her school's English teacher had assigned, which was on a very common topic, me in 10 years. She rested her chin on her hand and asked, "Teacher, do you think I can become a manga artist in 10 years? I told him with great certainty, "You can. In less than 10 years. 8 years later, she will become a manga artist with a huge fan base and extremely high popularity." Then did teacher Audrey also become a doctor? Yes. She let out an then suddenly and excitedly pointed outside the glass window at a tall, upright figure holding a black umbrella and walking under the green shade, and said with certainty, "Then teacher Noah must have also become a physics researcher." Through the curtain of rain, I looked up and met his gaze. My heart suddenly clenched, and memories quietly surfaced. He wouldn't have a 10 years later. 2 years later, he would die in a car accident. His name is Noah, the star pupil of the demon professor from the neighboring university as physics department, and also the center of countless girls' chats. The person who repeatedly appeared on the confession walls of various universities, and whom everyone said was flawless in both looks and ability, probably had only one flaw: coming from a poor family. In my memory, I didn't cross paths with him much. We only ran into each other a few times in our school's library, but the most memorable time was in my junior year, the day I went to the hospital to visit a sick Henry. On the way back to school, while crossing the crosswalk at a green light with other pedestrians, a speeding car ran a red light and rushed towards us. In the midst of screams and chaos, a black Mercedes-Benz appeared out of nowhere at a stunning speed and directly blocked the car. And after a violent screech of tires against the ground, the two cars crashed into the distant guardrail together. I subconsciously started to run over, but halfway there, an explosion suddenly went off. Flames instantly blocked my vision, and the summer cicadas on the nearby camphor trees, after a moment of silence, started to shriek themselves hoarse again. No one in the car survived. My temple was grazed by flying debris, leaving a scar. Later, this incident started trending, and the announced result was that of the two bodies burned beyond recognition. The car's driver was someone who wanted to get revenge on society after losing everything to gambling, and there was gasoline prepared in the car. The other one was Noah. The car belonged to his professor. That day, he was driving to help his professor pick up documents from another university and happened to be passing by that road on his return trip. Netizens quickly dug up all sorts of his information. Countless photos of him spread all over the internet. Some were amazed by his looks and talent and saddened by his passing, while others sighed. He saved so many families. So you could say he died a worthy death. After all, he was the only one all by himself. He had no father since he was a child. His mother died from a serious illness the year of his college entrance exams. Indeed, he was all alone. No one would be heartbroken by his departure. Only the research project he was working on at the time was suddenly interrupted. And for several years after, no one was able to take over and continue the research. One time when I brought flowers to visit him, I met his advisor, a chubby little old man, and he stood silently in front of the grave until a light rain started to fall, only then letting out a heavy sigh. This kid. He was supposed to have such a bright future. For a long time after that, I was in a state of insomnia. My whole heart felt like it was soaked in water, heavy and aching. I think that was probably guilt and regret towards him. My wrist was gently tugged. I snapped out of it. Noah's figure was no longer outside the window, and a student's voice sounded by my ear. Teacher Audrey, I'm going to teacher Noah's physics class now. Remember what I just said? Okay, don't be late tomorrow night. To be honest, I didn't hear what she said at all just now, but a distant memory from my past life told me that tomorrow is her birthday. And, because her parents are too busy and don't have time for her, she begged me to keep her company. The rain outside had stopped at some point. I gazed at a sliver of warm sunlight peeking through the clouds, and suddenly recalled the information I saw online about Noah after he died. Tomorrow is also his birthday. But in fact, Noah never celebrated his birthday, because on the day he was born, his firefighter father died in a huge fire while on duty. I didn't even get a chance to see him. I figured he probably wouldn't want a happy birthday, but that was the day he met this world. He shouldn't be all alone. So the next day, carrying a cake and a gift, I rushed to the student's home before the appointed time. At that time, Noah was in the middle of a lesson. The sun was sinking west outside the window. He wore a most ordinary white shirt, holding an exam paper as he stood to one side of the wooden desk, looking down at the questions. Refined and elegant. Seeing this scene, I couldn't help but think of a rumor I saw later on. It was a chat screenshot with an untraceable source and unknown authenticity, with only a few short lines of dialogue. Someone asked him, Noah, do you have someone you like? Go tell her. The page showed he only replied about 3 minutes later. Forget it. Most people actually didn't believe he would have a secret crush with a face like that. But by then he was already gone, and no one would ever know the truth. Even if it was true, his secret crush would also never see the light of day. Whether it was the father he had never met, the mother who fell ill and died, the secret crush no one knew about, the future that was cut short halfway, or the sacrifice no one lamented. He really had too many regrets. A shattered life, which ultimately had a sloppy ending as well. A genius from university as physics department shouldn't have had this kind of ending. After the class ended, the sky was already completely dark. The student impatiently ran up to me, picked up the paintbrushes I bought for her, and sighed. Ache. If teacher Noah didn't have something on, there could have been the three of us. I pondered for a few seconds, looked up at Noah, who had finished packing and was about to leave, and raised my voice and blurted out, How about teacher Noah? The words had just left my mouth, and in his gaze as he turned his head to look over, the power suddenly went out, and the surroundings were instantly plunged into pitch-black darkness. I coughed lightly, and calmly lied to him. Why don't you stay, teacher Noah? We girls are afraid of the dark. The air was quiet for a moment. Then suddenly with a pop, a cluster of flames lit up. Noah pressed down on the lighter with one hand, loosely cupping the flame with the other. The contours of his brows were outlined even more deeply in the light and shadow. He raised his eyes to look over, and said in a low voice, Okay. By the light of the flickering flame, I held the cake with the lit candles up to the two of them, looking at them and saying seriously, word by word, Today we celebrate the continuation of life, and you have to be safe and happy for the rest of your days. Putting aside my guilt towards him, nobody wants him to be safe and happy for the rest of his life more than I do. The light inside was dim. We shared the cake together. A cloyingly sweet smell spread around. The student, biting on a spoon, carefully ran into the study to get the report card, and said joyfully, "Teacher Audrey, my mom said I improved a lot on this exam, and, to show her thanks, she wants to treat you all to a meal." I looked at the scores on the sheet one by one, and remembered that this did indeed happen in my past life. But at that time, I was called by Olivia to help move props and take photos, so I tactfully declined the invitation to eat. My thoughts returned. I suddenly looked toward Noah sitting in the hazy light and shadow, and clearly realized that, on the day of that meal in my previous life, I was supposed to have gotten to know him. But in the end, I still didn't manage to make the appointment, because on my way there, I injured my calf and went to the hospital for saving a kid who was almost hit by a car. To prove I wasn't bailing at the last minute, I even took a photo and sent it to the students' parents. The wound wasn't serious. It just scraped the surface of the skin, had a bit of a burning pain, and didn't require hospitalization. While waiting for the doctor to apply medicine, I happened to scroll onto Olivia's moments, which were photos from their photography club's activity. Henry's figure also appeared in them. Right. As long as it's Olivia. He's always been at her beck and call. I remember on our 4th anniversary, Olivia had a fight with her boyfriend, and after getting drunk at a bar, she called Henry, crying and saying, "Gah, I'm so sad. Can you come keep me company?" Okay. At the time, we had just arrived at the restaurant we'd booked, and before we even had a chance to order, he got up to leave. I said I would go check on her too, but he stopped me. The reason being, Inan, Shashia has always cared a lot about her pride since she was little. She definitely wouldn't want you to see her in such a mess. I asked him, "What about you? We grew up together since we were kids." It's different. Not long after Olivia and her boyfriend made up, at a gathering, she said coquettishly to her boyfriend, "You're not the only one who likes me. If you make me mad again, I'll dump you." Henry, on the side, silently drank a glass of alcohol and said nothing. Actually, he must have understood all along that Olivia knew he liked her, but she pretended to know nothing, continuing to enjoy his kindness without any burden, while also being with the person she liked. And as for me, Henry's one line, "She's my sister, and also your friend," could shut down everything I wanted to say. Luckily, now that I get a do-over, I won't be their tool again. After getting my wound bandaged, I limped out of the hospital, but halfway there it suddenly started raining. The wound couldn't get wet, so I endured the sharp pain and quickly found a building for shelter, preparing to call a car. Unfortunately, when it rains, it pours. My phone ran out of battery and shut down. The late summer wind carried a slight chill, and just as I had resigned myself to waiting for the rain to stop, Noah appeared. He came through the rain holding an umbrella, took off his jacket and tied it around my injured calf. Then after placing the umbrella in my hand, he picked me up in his arms and said, "The road here is narrow. It's hard to get a taxi. Let's go somewhere else." I leaned in his arms, a bit stunned. In my nose was the faint scent of bitter pomelo. By my ear was the steady sound of his heartbeat in his chest, and my gaze swept past his prominent Adam's apple, finally landing on his side profile. After getting in the car, I asked him how he came over. He very naturally explained that the student's mom was worried, but since she still had a meeting, she asked him to come help check on me. As a result, my phone was off and he couldn't contact me, and he had to search for a long time before finding me, probably because of the rain. The inside of the car was damp and a bit stuffy. I opened the window a crack, unable to imagine just how many places he had searched. Later, after my tired nerves relaxed, I was hit by a wave of drowsiness. When I woke up again, the rain had stopped, and we had just arrived at the school gate. After Noah carefully helped me out of the car, he then carried me to the entrance of the dorm building. Before we parted, I thanked him. Hearing this, he looked down at me, his lips curving as he said, "You're too kind, teacher." After struggling back to the dorm, I realized his jacket was still tied around my injured calf. 6. It was already autumn when I went to a university to return the jacket, because my leg injury needed to heal, and it had been drizzling continuously. I hadn't really left the campus much. The day I went to look for Noah was a weekend, and the weather was clear. It was only after I got to the university that I realized I had been a bit reckless, running over without knowing any information at all. Looking for a person like this was undoubtedly like finding a needle in a haystack. The end result was, I didn't find Noah. but accidentally ran into Henry. I was passing the basketball court at the time, and from amid the chaotic noise, I heard someone shout, "Quick, call an ambulance. He's passed out." My instincts from years as a doctor made me subconsciously run over, and after pushing through the crowd and seeing a boy who had passed out on the ground, I immediately knelt down to check on him and perform CPR. About 15 minutes later, the boy gradually regained consciousness, and the doctor from the school infirmary arrived as well. I slowly got up, about to leave, but then I happened to see Henry across from me, who had been watching me for who knows how long. He was wearing a red and black jersey, standing in the middle of the crowd. I calmly looked away, picked up my jacket, and turned to leave, probably because of the excessive attention. A guy's question came from behind me. "Henry, you know her?" "Don't know her." Hugging my jacket, I found the nearest dessert shop to sit down and rest, slowly recovering my spent energy. The wind chime on the glass door occasionally let out a crisp ding-dong sound, and I was boredly playing Gamoku on my phone. After the wind chime rang again, a figure suddenly dropped down in front of me. I looked up. It was Noah. The sound effect of a game failure came from the phone. I looked at him in pleasant surprise and said with a smile, "What a coincidence, to run into each other like this." The next second, he raised his eyebrows and said, "Not a coincidence. I came looking for you on purpose." Seeing my confused expression, he unlocked his phone and placed it in front of me. The page displayed was a "Find Someone" post on the confession wall. The photo was of me saving someone on the basketball court, with the caption, "Within 3 minutes. I want to know all the information about this woman." Less than half an hour after it was posted, it had already accumulated hundreds of comments in the discussion. But most people were just joining in on the fun, with only a very few seriously exchanging comments. "Look at this professional first aid technique. She's probably from the medical school next door. Why is she at our school? The jacket in her hand seems to be a men's style. Is it her boyfriend's? Her boyfriend is from our school." I didn't continue reading the rest, and somewhat awkwardly picked up the jacket beside me and handed it to him. "It's already been washed clean." That night when I got back to the dorm, my roommate, who's a huge gossip, immediately handed her phone to me. On it was a university's confession wall, and the latest post was, "The case is solved. She's the girlfriend of Noah from the physics department." The attached picture was of me handing the jacket to Noah in the dessert shop, and the pink filter applied to it forcibly added a touch of ambiguity. As my roommate's gossipy soul was burning fiercely, I immediately explained the whole story to her. After hearing the whole process, she, in her disappointment, struggled to say, "Looks like they have potential. I'll just ship them a little for now." I smiled helplessly, lowered my head and glanced at Noah's WeChat profile picture. His nickname was just 2 simple characters, Noah. The avatar is a pure white paper crane. After thinking for a moment, I changed the nickname to Teacher 1. His moments feed is very clean, with only one text-only post. "The wind has risen. The post time is the day we met." Somehow, I suddenly remembered that on another of fate's trajectories, on the 6th anniversary of his death, the sky cleared after the rain. The afterglow filled the horizon, and I brought a bouquet of flowers to visit him. At that time, my shadow was reflected on the tombstone. I was quietly looking at the gentle and handsome him on the grayscale photo, when suddenly the wind rose. The strands of hair falling by my shoulders fluttered in the wind. The leaves rustled nonstop, just like a signal that fate's path was starting a new chapter. Later, time and space reversed, returning to the past. We met, thankfully. The time I returned to was before I met Henry. Compared to starting over and choosing to waste time getting revenge on him, I'd much rather we become complete strangers. Just like what he said on the basketball court that day. Don't know her. My freshman year came to an abrupt end in chaos and a hurry. And if I remember correctly, the person Olivia likes will be among the upcoming new batch of students at a university. He's Henry's direct junior. And according to how things developed in my past life, the two of them met at a gathering organized by Henry. Then Olivia will fall for him and start setting me and Henry up. And eventually, through the coincidences she creates time and time again, Henry will ask me to be with him. And now he had also returned to the time before Olivia and that boy met. Would probably prevent the two from getting to know each other. And finally get together with Olivia. This was the ending I had imagined. But the way fate unfolds is always dramatic. In the exam hall for the last specialized course before the holiday, I was sitting behind and to the right of Olivia. And just as I finished answering the questions and was about to hand in my paper, I saw her, who had been sleeping on the desk, suddenly jolt awake and stand up. She picked up the test paper and glanced at it. Then after looking around, she grabbed a dazed classmate beside her and excitedly asked him in a loud voice, "What year is it now? Tell me what year it is now." I quietly watched her back, then got up, handed in my test paper, and left. Outside the exam hall, Henry was waiting for her. As we brushed past each other, he suddenly called out to me, and when I stopped and looked over in confusion, he asked, "You're together with him?" I didn't know what he was trying to. "What's it to you?" After that, because of the vacation, I didn't see him again for a long time. I had originally thought that the two of them, starting over, would have a mutual pursuit and ultimately have a perfectly happy ending. I didn't expect that wasn't the case. Olivia once again didn't choose Henry. Even with a do-over, she still liked Henry's junior. What she said to Henry back then after she was cheated on and got divorced was just a lie. Surprisingly, this time instead, it's to set up Henry and Jiang Lai, the woman who would make her husband cheat in the future. I had no idea what happened during that vacation that ended. And when we met again, Olivia had already become good friends with Jiang Lai. The night wind was a bit chilly. I was holding my books and walking on the path back to the dorm building when I saw Henry and Olivia talking downstairs from afar. My steps didn't stop, and as I walked straight past them, I heard their conversation from behind. "Olivia, I'll say it again. She's not a good person. You're so naive. If you don't stay away from her, you'll be deceived sooner or later." The next second, Olivia's coquettish voice sounded, "Bro, trust me. That's just because you don't know her. She's really super nice. Just give it a try and be with her. Please. I'm begging you." Olivia officially announced her relationship 2 months later. That day was a weekend. While I was at a party, I ran into a dead drunk Henry at the corner of the hallway outside the private room. As I was coming back from the restroom, he suddenly pulled me into his arms, and the strong smell of alcohol instantly enveloped me. After I came to my senses, the more I struggled, the tighter he held me. And he spoke in a low, hoarse voice by my ear. Xia, why are you with him? He will hurt you in the future. You must have been forced. The one you obviously like is me. Right. The person you obviously like is me. Later, my resistance was fruitless. As I raised my foot to kick his shin, the hand pressing on my back suddenly let go. The next second, someone grabbed him by the wrist and threw him to the ground. And I, because I had been struggling so hard, was about to fall over after being suddenly released. Amidst my slightly suppressed gasp, a strong and powerful arm caught my waist just in time. It was Noah. He happened to be here for his group's celebration party, and had come out midway for some air, unintentionally stumbling upon this scene, probably because of the pain. Henry, who was thrown on the ground, sobered up a bit. He clumsily propped himself up against the wall and frowned as he looked at me. Audrey. Saying another word would be a waste of breath, so I grabbed Noah and was about to leave. But Henry spoke mockingly from behind me. "Aren't you smug, Audrey? I know you like me. Seeing that I couldn't be with Xia, you're smug, aren't you? So what if you're with him? He's just a short-lived wretch. Someone who's going to die in the end anyway. I know he might be mixing up the people and events from 2 lifetimes right now, and is emotionally unstable, and has started lashing out and attacking people with his words. I also don't care what he says about me, but he shouldn't have badmouthed Noah." Stopping my steps, I turned and walked in front of Henry, who was still looking at us with a scornful expression, and told him word by word, "You shut up, Henry. He won't die, because I'm here. I'm here to change his fate. Although I can't travel back to before his father's sacrifice to save his father. And I also can't travel back to before his mother died of illness to save his mother. But I've traveled to the present, and I can save him." My mind was wandering as I walked out of the hotel entrance, and it was only at the moment a passing car honked that I suddenly realized I was still holding Noah's hand. My slightly warm palm seemed a bit damp. I paused for a second and immediately let go, putting my hand behind my back and secretly clenching it. "Sorry, I forgot. And thanks for just now." His hand hanging by his side was loosely clenched into a fist. He looked down at me and asked, "What he said just now?" My heart suddenly thumped, and I impatiently interrupted him. "What he just said was drunken nonsense. Don't believe him. Noah, you're going to have a bright future. You still have a long, long future ahead of you." After looking at each other in silence for a few seconds, he suddenly smiled lightly and asked me, "What about you then, Audrey? You'll definitely become an excellent doctor in the future, right?" After a long while, I smiled brightly at him and nodded firmly. "As long as I'm alive, I will do my best to treat the sick and save people." In the end, Olivia still failed to successfully set up Henry and Jiang Lai. But Jiang Lai fell for Henry and started pestering him. In a sense, Olivia's goal was sort of achieved, because Jiang Lai probably wouldn't make her husband cheat in the future. The only thing she probably didn't expect was that Henry had also traveled back in time. And Henry was the same, stubbornly believing what Olivia told him in their past life. That lie was like an oxygen mask for him while drowning, letting him love while barely hanging on. The one who ultimately shattered this oxygen mask was also Olivia. It was at a party not long after, one I didn't attend. That night, the two roommates who returned to the dorm described the situation to me with extremely complicated expressions on their faces. After Olivia got drunk, she slapped Jiang Lai. No one could hold her back, and she insisted on calling her a shameless homewrecker. The more her boyfriend tried to stop her, the crazier she got. But the strange thing was, her older brother was unusually calm at the time, just calmly standing to the side, watching her throw a drunken fit. I was slightly surprised for a moment, opened my mouth, but in the end said nothing. That wasn't Henry being calm, but resignation. He knew that Olivia had also transmigrated back, that not only did she not choose to be with him, she instead treated him as a tool, used to intercept Jiang Lai. Henry, was nothing but a joke. For a long time after that, I never saw him come looking for Olivia again. But Olivia didn't care either. I did, however, run into him a few times when I went to a university to look for Noah. The deepest impression I have is of the day Noah and I were eating at a newly opened restaurant outside of school. As we passed an outdoor barbecue stall, some people suddenly started fighting. Henry was among them. The scene instantly became chaotic, filled with all kinds of angry roars, screams, shattering sounds. Shards from a violently smashed beer bottle flew straight towards me. Noah, with his quick eyes and nimble hands, yanked me into his arms, and the shards grazed the side of his face, leaving a very thin trail of blood. I exclaimed in horror. "Noah." He quickly pulled me into a dumpling shop across the street and comforted me. "It's okay. Don't be scared." Later, before the police arrived, the commotion suddenly died down, and I used mineral water to clean Noah's wounds. Then I took out a green cartoon band-aid from my pocket, and just as I was leaning in to carefully put it on him, Henry pushed the door open and came in. Coming in with him were a few other people from the group fight just now, probably his friends, all injured to varying degrees. Henry still had traces of wiped-away blood on the corner of his lips, while they were still furiously cursing out the other side from the recent group fight. I continued to quietly put a band-aid on Noah. Then I heard Henry suddenly kick the table and say, full of hostility, "It's so damn noisy." The next day, I was stopped by Henry at school. It was snowing lightly at the time. His face still had bruises. The look in his eyes as he looked at me was full of complexity. And he said, "Audrey, it's not going. A word of advice for you. Don't like him." My expression gradually turned cold, and I turned around to toss him a line. "I'm not in psychiatry. Don't come to me." From behind came his somewhat flippant, devil-may-care voice. "Audrey, the person you were supposed to like is me." My life has been peaceful and smooth. The only tribulation was meeting Henry and Olivia, wasting 6 years of feelings. And Noah, he is the person. When I first transmigrated back, I thought I was here to change my fate of being with Henry, but later I found out that wasn't the case. One afternoon near the end of my sophomore year, I was suddenly woken up by a nightmare during my nap. In the dream, I returned to that intersection. While crossing the road with the pedestrians, a speeding car rushed towards us, and in the panicked crowd, I could only watch as that black Mercedes blocked the car, and then exploded. The old fan overhead blew my hair all over the place, and I opened my eyes and stared blankly at the ceiling. I've always known. This is an unsolvable question. Other than the reason of driving to hit people to get revenge on society, I'm not clear on any information about that driver. I can save Noah, and I can also not go to that intersection. But what about the remaining elderly, children, pregnant women, and students who will be on that road? Once, when my deep thoughts led nowhere, I went to the police, clinging to a 1 in 10,000 chance. And the reply I got was, "Student, have you been watching too many sci-fi movies? We handle cases based." In early June, the Gaokao arrived, and Noah and I ended our tutoring jobs at the same time. By this time, I had known him for almost 2 years, and I had neither seen nor heard him mention any special girl. So I could basically conclude that the secret crush screenshot was fake. I had actually imagined the type of girl he might like. Perhaps pretty, perhaps smart, perhaps as outstanding as him. But no matter which type, she would definitely be very good. That night, the students' parents again invited us to dinner to express their gratitude. After it was over, it was already dark, and Noah and I were walking in an alley where moonlight scattered. Perhaps it was because I knew the end of the road meant parting, or perhaps because the night always brings out sorrow and wistfulness. I spoke up as if to start a casual chat while passing by a dim, yellow streetlight. "Noah, do you have someone you like?" After a long silence, he answered, but not the question. "What's wrong? If you have someone you like in the future, you must tell her. Don't secretly have a crush without letting her know. If you speak up, there'll always be a chance." As I finished speaking, we paused at an intersection. He suddenly spoke up and said to me very seriously, "Audrey, thank you." I thought he was thanking me for my reminder and didn't think much of it. After that, I went on living my days as usual, until the day before Noah's sacrifice in my previous life. His mentor told him to drive to pick up a document the next day. After I found out, I asked him if we could go in the afternoon instead. A friend gave me 2 movie tickets for the morning. He said okay. I picked the movie randomly. Coincidentally, it happened to be a time travel themed one. Movie description: the heroine returns to the past to make up for the hero's regrets. And just when they fall in love, they discover it was just the heroine's dream. However, in reality, I didn't see the ending. And halfway through, I told Noah, who was seriously watching the movie, that I was going to the restroom. Just as ordinary as any other day from before. After leaving the cinema, I drove the rented car towards that intersection. On the way, I suddenly realized that our meeting was just for the sake of parting. "Noah, this time it's your turn to go see the future world." Later, as I was at the intersection watching that familiar crowd cross the road, waiting for that car to appear, an explosion suddenly went off nearby. My heart jolted violently. After my mind went blank for a moment, I quickly got out of the car, calling Noah's phone as I ran towards the direction of the explosion. The phone kept ringing unanswered. I stood before the burning ruins, and my vision gradually became covered by a watery mist. A wave of dizziness almost overwhelmed my entire head. And the last thing I remember is, I still couldn't save him. I woke up in a hospital room. The air was filled with the familiar smell of disinfectant. The phone by my pillow. The white coat. The familiar nurse. Everything was telling me. It's now 8 years later. The nurse said I had been unconscious for 20 minutes, staring at the gauze curtains being blown by the wind. For a moment I couldn't tell if I had dreamed of the past, or if the present was a dream. Not until I got up, ran to the bathroom, scooped up a handful of cold water to splash on my face, and saw that the scar on my forehead was really gone. Only then was I sure that I had really traveled through time. I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling as I opened the browser and quickly searched for keywords related to that car crash, only to find a very simple record in a very small, very old news report. The trending topics were gone. Noah's information was gone. The tombstone was gone. Everything was gone. Later, I asked a lot of people, asking them if they remembered the car accident from 6 years ago that was a trending topic. Asking them if they remembered the college student who sacrificed himself to save many families. The answers I got were nothing more than 2 kinds. "Audrey, did you remember it wrong? I think there was a car accident. But how is it a trending topic? I don't know. 6 years ago is too long ago. Either I didn't pay attention to it, or I forgot." Noah had no family. and his old classmates had long since scattered all over the world. So I could only go to his university to find the professor I remembered him having. But the news I got was that that professor had already gone abroad. I could no longer find anyone or anything related to Noah. The only evidence that made me sure I really knew him was his WeChat on my phone. The last message in the chat box was from the day before the car accident 6 years ago. It was the message he sent agreeing to see a movie with me. For the 6 years after that, a complete blank. I typed and deleted in the chat box over and over. But in the end, I didn't dare to send it. I was afraid it would become a message that would never get a reply. As long as I don't try to confirm it, I can believe that he's still alive. I developed a habit of going for walks at university whenever I had free time. And, more often than not, I would unconsciously walk to the side of the lake we used to frequent. Noah's lab was on the first floor nearby. Through the clear glass window, I seemed to see a slender figure in a white lab coat in front of the lab bench, leaning over, focused on recording all kinds of data on paper. The next second, it disappeared again. Henry came looking for me the day after I transmigrated back. He said he didn't want to break up anymore, that it was all a spuro-fement impulse, and asked me to trust him one more time. Faced with his humble, begging posture, I stopped the pen I was using to write medical records, looked up, and calmly asked him, "Henry, were we ever together?" As soon as I said that, the color instantly drained from his face. The truth is, he really had no evidence to prove we had ever been together. After transmigrating back, it wasn't just the trending topic about Noah's sacrifice that disappeared, but also my 6-year relationship with Henry. Fate made the four of us simultaneously transmigrate back 8 years. He wanted to change the outcome of Olivia marrying a scumbag, wanted to be with her. So he personally changed our relationship. Although in the end he discovered he was just a tool being used. He really had nothing to do with me anymore. After that, Henry went crazy trying to find all sorts of evidence to tell me that I had once been with him for 6 years. But it was all in vain. No longer friends on WeChat. Photos of us together now only had him in them. Friends in our respective circles no longer knew the other person. And surveillance footage from places we had been to no longer had me in it. As time went on, many colleagues around me went from initially gossiping to starting to sigh. Such a handsome guy. How come there's something wrong with his head? I smiled, and facing the reappeared Henry, said softly, "The psychiatric department is out the door to your left. Go get yourself checked out when you have time." With me firmly denying that I was ever with Henry, the only person who knew we had been together was Olivia. After transmigrating back, she was cheated on once again. Even if I had prevented the possibility of Jiang Lai and her husband getting together, people who want to cheat will always cheat. During the time Henry was pestering me, not only was Jiang Lai pestering him, but Olivia was also crazily pestering him, desperately playing the victim and telling Henry how much she loved him and how she had no other choice. At first, Henry was just cold towards her, but he grew more and more impatient, until one time, after Henry refused to meet her, she came to my place and caused a huge scene. I watched her quietly, then called security to restrain her, and said the same words to her. "The psychiatry department is to the left when you go out. You should go get checked out too." My colleague continued to sigh. They really are a family. Huh. Their brains aren't quite right. Things were quiet for a while, and the next time I saw them was a month later, when I went to the lab department to get some files from a colleague. I saw from afar a scene of Henry furiously slamming some papers at the 3 people opposite him. I didn't pay it any mind. I turned and left. Later, I found out from colleagues' chatter that Henry had overheard something Olivia said when her mother discovered she was relentlessly pestering him and firmly tried to stop her. After a blood test, it was determined that the 2 of them were half-siblings with the same father, only 3 months apart in age. In other words, Henry's dad cheated while his mom was pregnant, and the lie Olivia once used to deceive Henry. Her mom threatened to kill herself to stop them from being together. After going in a big circle, it actually came true. In mid-May, I was invited by a university to give a lecture to students about first aid knowledge. The venue was packed, and as I was packing my things to leave after it was over, I suddenly saw a familiar back in the crowd dispersing below the stage. But before I could get a clear look, they were gone. The sky had already darkened. I walked to the main entrance of the auditorium, and a light rain had started to fall outside. After thinking for a moment, just as I was about to hold my folder over my head and dash into the rain, a black umbrella suddenly appeared over me. The familiar scent of bitter pomelo came from behind me. A string of water droplets slid down the tilted surface of the umbrella. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. After a long while, I slowly turned around, still holding the folder over my head. What I saw was Noah, who I hadn't seen in 6 years, just like he used to be. His features were defiant and cold, his jawline sharp and defined. After that car crash explosion, Noah was taken abroad by his professor for treatment, and was in a coma for about 2 years. After waking up, I stayed abroad for treatment and studying the whole time. Until now, I've returned to the country, entered a research institute, and become a physics professor at this university. This was his 6-year experience, summed up in just a few words. I blinked, and the thousands of words I wanted to say ultimately just boiled down to 2 words. How nice. He's still alive. How nice. The teacher one of the past, the professor one of today. What hasn't changed is that he's still popular with the girls. It is said that for his classes, it's so crowded that people have to stand and listen. With some curiosity, I also once wanted to go take a look in my spare time, but that time was very unfortunate. He had temporarily switched classes with a teacher, and I didn't know. By the time I realized, it was already too late. I wanted to sneak out, but because I had chosen a spot in the inner corner by the window, it wasn't easy to leave. The moment I stood up, I would definitely disturb a large group of students around me. After struggling for half the class, I had just sent a message to Noah when I was called on to answer a question. Staring at the geology question on the blackboard that I couldn't understand at all, I took a deep breath. Just as I was about to apologize and say I'd entered the wrong classroom, a low voice suddenly came from behind me. Hey Dianian. I subconsciously repeated it, got the answer right, and sat back down. On my phone, Noah hadn't replied to my message. Thinking of the reminder from the classmate behind me just now, I quietly turned around to thank him, only to meet that familiar, handsome face at a glance. Noah was wearing a black hoodie, the hood casually pulled over his head, his bangs pressed down a bit, partially covering his eyes and brows. In a daze, it was as if I saw the him from 8 years ago. Quickly turning back around, after a slight daze, just as I was about to ask him why he was here, the phone on my lap buzzed. It was a message from him. I happened to see you enter this classroom. I wanted to see what kind of class would interest our Dr. Audrio to come listen in person. And above his message was the plea for help I had sent him a few minutes ago. I originally wanted to attend your class, but it seems I'm in the wrong classroom. What should I do now? The phone vibrated again, and his message appeared once more. So this is my class. Me. In 6 years' time. Noah's personality seemed to have changed a bit. Still aloof and cold, but he was more restrained back then. From then on, my relationship with Noah returned to how it was 6 years ago. But there were also some things that were different from 6 years ago. At first, I couldn't really perceive what that was, until one time when I went to the school to look for him. I accidentally overheard a conversation. That was probably his colleague, who was lovesick, asking him with a sigh, Professor Noah, tell me, what on earth should I do to let her know that I like her? Sigh, you definitely don't have this kind of trouble. You wouldn't understand my pain. Noah didn't make a sound, and he continued to ask, speaking of which, since you've rejected so many people, do you already have someone you like? My breathing lightened, and I heard an N, without making a sound to disturb. I quietly turned and left. In 6 years' time, just way too many things can happen. I admit, I like Noah. As for when that mentality of wanting to compensate morphed into liking, its origin can no longer be traced. But back then, for something I knew would have no result, my only choice was to suppress it. Until 6 years later, when the spring breeze came, it spread in an instant. After that, for a long time, I used being busy with work and having to work overtime as an excuse to rarely see him, keeping our relationship at a not too close distance, until he appeared in my consultation room for 3 days in a row. I told him, somewhat helplessly, Noah, you don't have to come every day, he said, a little stubbornly and earnestly. I registered and queued up. What I mean is, you don't have to come to see the doctor every day. It's not serious. He fell silent for a moment, his lowered voice seemingly filled with immense restraint. Actually, I'm not here to see a doctor. Halfway through my sentence, a vicious, knife-wielding man suddenly burst into the consultation room. I remember him. Not long ago, he had domestically abused his wife, causing her to commit suicide by taking pills. She was sent to the hospital, but died after rescue efforts failed. And he has always believed it was the doctors who killed his wife. Just like now, he agitatedly brandished the knife and said viciously to me, "You killed my wife." Later, amidst the chaos, the man was subdued, and Noah was cut by the knife while protecting me. The wound was on the back of his shoulder, and it got 10 stitches. I stood in front of the hospital bed, looking at his somewhat pale face, when the tip of my nose suddenly stung, and even my voice became a bit unnaturally hoarse. "I'm sorry." Whether it was in the past or now, he always gets hurt because of me. Half a month after he was hospitalized, on the way as I was driving him home, I tactfully suggested, "Let me hire a male caregiver for you. Otherwise it wouldn't be good if people get the wrong idea." He was typing on his phone with one hand. Hearing that, his fingers suddenly paused, and he turned his head to ask me, "Misunderstand what?" The inside of the car fell silent for a moment. A breeze blew in from the window, and the hair on his forehead fluttered with the wind, stirring faint ripples in the calm lake of my heart. My fingers gripped the steering wheel. I stared ahead, and didn't speak again. In the end, since he refused to let a stranger come in to take care of him, I shouldered the responsibility I was supposed to. But in reality, he didn't need much taking care of. I just prepared a lunch in advance before going to work every morning, went to work after eating breakfast with him, and then came back to have dinner together at night. As time went on, a strange feeling gradually began to sprout deep in my heart. One night, because of a colleague's birthday party that I couldn't turn down, I called him beforehand to say I would be back late. Later, my car suddenly broke down, and a male colleague who was going the same way dropped me off downstairs at my apartment complex. The moment I opened the door, a sour smell immediately hit me in the face. I saw Noah sitting at the dining table, poking at the food in his bowl. So I asked him, "What are you eating?" His expression was calm, his tone normal. "Can't you smell it? I'm eating vinegar." I walked to the table and took a look. It was a boiled dumpling takeout had ordered, and the small saucer in front of him was filled to the brim with vinegar. I cooked him a new bowl of noodles, opened the window to air the place out, and reminded him, "Don't eat like this next time. The vinegar taste is too strong." He lowered his eyes and ate his noodles silently, not saying a word. The next day, his colleague came to visit him. It was the teacher who had previously asked him if he had a crush. A deliberately forgotten fact resurfaced. Noah has someone he likes. I don't know what that teacher said to him, but it made Noah's mood change a bit. Then, I got annoyed at myself for paying too much attention to him. So, when we were having dinner that evening, I said to him, "Your wound is almost healed." He glanced at me, nodded and hummed. After eating, I went into the bathroom somewhat silently to run warm water for him, habitually reminding him not to touch his wound. But on my way out, my foot slipped and I was about to fall. In the nick of time, I was pulled into his arms. The frantic pounding of the heartbeat made me unable to tell whose it was for a moment. After calming down for a few seconds, I tried to get up, but he held my waist tightly, not letting me move an inch. The bathroom was filled with swirling steam, and the places where our bodies touched felt like a fire was gradually igniting. He looked down at me, his expression a little different from usual. Something seemed to be churning in his eyes, his voice low and hoarse. "Audrey, I have to confess something." "What?" "I'm having inappropriate thoughts about you." My mind was a complete mess, the increasingly feverish atmosphere burning all my rationality to ashes. I subconsciously blurted out the conversation I heard that day. Someone asked him if he had someone he liked, and he clearly said "uh-huh." The next second, he gripped my waist, turned, and pressed me against the sink, freeing one hand to write a character, stroke by stroke, on the steamy mirror surface. Not long after getting together with Noah, I asked a question that I had been holding in for a very, very long time. Why did he never contact me during the 6 years he was abroad? At the time, he was on the sofa reading a physics magazine. Hearing my words, he scooped my whole self into his arms. A faint bitter pomelo scent came from him, and I heard his low, hoarse voice. I was scared. Before I could say anything, he held me and continued speaking. I was afraid I'd become a cripple and wouldn't be good enough for you. I was afraid that if I contacted you, I would want more. I was even more afraid that you already had someone you liked. In the brief pause for breath, a pang of heartache rose in my heart, and my eyes started to sting. I hugged him back and, full of emotion, said, "Noah, you're really amazing. To be able to walk such a difficult path to come before me." After a moment of silence, his hand traced down my waistline. He let out a low chuckle and asked me in a soft, slow voice, "I can be even more amazing. Does Doctor want to see for herself?" Me. The tender atmosphere was instantly ruined. Afterwards, regarding this question, Noah always proved it to me physically, and would pause in the middle to ask if he was amazing or not. I never answered, and he never gave up. The first time Noah took me to meet his parents was half a year after we started dating. Looking at the woman on the tombstone, I was a little surprised. She was a very beautiful and gentle woman, but in the end, she was tormented by illness until she was unrecognizable. When she died, I was by her side. My mother was her attending physician. In my senior year of high school, whenever I went to the hospital to find my mom, I would see an auntie. Sometimes, if I didn't see my mom in her office, I would wait in her hospital room. As I went more often, I slowly got to know her. I would cut fruit for her, fold paper cranes for her, and chat with her. Until the eve of the college entrance exams, she passed away. That was the first time I directly faced a major illness and death. For some reason, I understood my parents who had no time to be with me because of their work at the hospital. And when filling out my college application, I chose the medical major I had always hated the most. Too bad. I used to think only cancer was incurable, and wanted to work hard to find a way. But after I started studying medicine, I found out there are very few diseases that can be completely cured. What I didn't expect even more was that she was Noah's mother. On the way back, I leaned against the car window watching the trees and grass that were flying past, and said in a low voice, "Noah, actually, I met your mom a very, very long time ago." He said calmly, I know." My heart stirred, and I guessed he had probably seen me back then. The next time I saw Henry was one evening half a year later. Noah sent a message saying arriving in 10 minutes. I changed my clothes and got ready to get off work. And then in the elevator I ran into the pale-faced, gaunt Henry. It was just the two of us. In the silence, the elevator reached the first floor, and I walked straight ahead. But my arm was suddenly grabbed. He lowered his gaze and asked me, "Audrey, can we talk?" I frowned and pulled away from his grasp, speaking coldly, "Henry, let's not waste each other's time." He seemed to have guessed my answer, gave a self-mocking laugh, and said, "You might not believe it, but on another trajectory of fate, we were once together for 6 years." Not bothering to deal with him, I turned to leave, and his lowered voice came from behind me. "It's a pity. I wasn't good to you, and I lost you." My footsteps paused for a moment, and I continued walking forward. By the flower beds outside the hospital, Noah was waiting for me, under the afterglow of the setting sun. For some reason, I recalled the time a student's parent invited us to dinner for the second time. I arrived at the location first, and thanked the parent for their concern about me getting injured and going to the hospital the previous time. Hearing this, she said in confusion, "I didn't tell Noah to go visit you. I just casually mentioned the reason you weren't there. Then he said he had something to do at school and left. So, that's how it was." My fingers were held, my thoughts interrupted. He tucked a strand of my hair, tousled by the evening wind, behind my ear. I hugged his arm, leaning slightly against his side, and said with wholehearted joy and delight, "Noah, it's getting windy." Side story: Noah. The netizens were right. I'm all alone, and it's better for just me to die than to destroy so many families. Actually, I'm not that noble either. It's human nature to be afraid of death. But if there's someone I care about in the situation, I'm willing to die to let her live. When I regained consciousness after the explosion, I was trapped in a cemetery. At first, on every anniversary of my death, the people I had saved and some netizens would come. And what I heard most were thanks and praise saying my death had been valuable. Later on, the only one who still came was Audrey. She rarely spoke, most of the time just placing flowers before the tombstone, cleaning up the ground around it, and then silently sitting for a while. The first words I heard her say were on the 4th anniversary of my death. By then, no one came to visit me anymore except for her. In the hazy, misty rain, she stood before the tombstone, looking down at my photo and said, as if making a promise, "Noah, don't you worry. I won't forget you." That was the first time she called my name. I never would have thought that getting to know her would be through death. But if I could do it all over again, I would still make the same choice. So when I unexpectedly returned to 8 years ago in the 6th year after my death, I still chose that ending for myself. I know she time traveled back too. I know her getting close was to make amends and out of guilt. But that was good enough. After all, it's better than not having known each other in the last life, right? The years I once spent alone were terrifyingly long. But the 2 years after getting to know her were the first time I felt that time was short. If I'm destined to never be her lover, then becoming someone she'll never forget for her entire life is pretty good too. I don't actually remember what that criminal looked like. And I don't know his license plate number either. But I remember that before that intersection, he threw a few beer cans out of the car window, drinking while driving. This will be the only information I have to stop him before Audrey does. Therefore, when I saw him smash a beer can out of his car again, I caught up and honked at him. And, unexpectedly, he seemed to be suddenly provoked and immediately rushed towards a nearby small square. As I accelerated to block my way past, I inappropriately thought of that movie I never finished watching. I guess I'll never know the ending anymore. That year, during late spring, I took leave from school to visit my mother in the hospital. The ward was very quiet, and my mother was still asleep. As I walked to the other side to sit down and read, I saw a plate of cut fruit pieces on the bedside table, and next to it was a hand-folded, pure white paper crane. While I was momentarily stunned, my mother woke up. She smiled very gently and said to me, "Enan folded this for me.